Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast. We're turning on all four burners. That's right. We're talking NFL. We're going to talk basketball. We're going to talk international basketball, NBA basketball, a little high school basketball. We're going to talk Major League Baseball. And we're also going to talk some NHL hockey with a special guest, Ryan McCarthy from Belly Up Sports Hockey Department. And that is what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove Podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Welcome into today's Sports Stove Podcast. We are live on YouTube. We're going to be live on YouTube during these recordings. We'll put it out on Twitter when we're going to be going on, and Instagram as well. We're going to be doing Sunday afternoons, and we're going to be working on trying to put out a little bit more content. So maybe some Tuesday evening and some Thursday evening shows as well. Working on getting some good guests for you all as well. But today, I'm joined again by my dad, Dale Stover. Dad, how you doing?
Doing good. It's an exciting time, all kinds of sports.
You know, I was thinking about it the other day. Football season is kind of in itself great. And then you've got March Madness and everything that kind of surrounds that. I put that in there. But this time of year is I put it third in exciting sports times because you've got NBA playoffs, you've got NHL playoffs. If you're into college baseball, they're in the World Series playoffs and everything right now as well. You got some off-season stuff going on in the NFL. Baseball's in full swing. So, yeah, it's a great time to be a sports fan for sure. Dad, we haven't had you on in a while. We've had a few people reach out. Well, not reach out, but I've been in conversation with people, and they said, "Oh, I really like it when your dad joins you." So I knew it was time to get you back on the program. And even though you're in mourning right now, as the Predators have been eliminated from the NHL playoffs, we'll talk about that more with Ryan McCarthy here in about 10 to 15 minutes. He'll be joining us to go over that. So, Dad, we're going to talk about four different sports today. We're going to start off with football, and our football segment today is sponsored by Belly Up Sports. You go to bellyupsports.com. You're going to find articles about all kinds of sports things, podcasts, including ours. You're also going to find a lot of fantasy sport information. Baseball is, of course, the big thing going on right now. All that available at bellyupsports.com. The main football topic, Dad, is Julio Jones at the moment, at least. The Atlanta Falcons have said back in the draft that it looks like Julio Jones was going to be moving. Of course, there was the controversy as Shannon Sharp called Julio Jones live on the air, and there's a lot of question about whether or not Julio Jones knew he was live on the air and all that kind of stuff. But the most recent reports, Diana Rossini seems to be all over this, but it's the Seattle Seahawks or the Los Angeles Rams at the moment seem to be the two main leaders. Seattle's gotten the main push going on right now. We're not going to know anything till after June the 1st, but I assume it's going to move quickly once June the 1st hits due to cap situation and things like that. Julio Jones, I still have him in my top three NFL receivers, Dad. What do you think, whoever gets Julio Jones, what kind of player do you think they're getting?
Well, they're getting a guy who obviously has been really, really good, and I think he's very motivated. I think he's still got a couple good years, and I don't think there's any doubt you put him with a good quarterback and a good system. I mean, he can improve any receiving core. So I think he can make a big difference as long as you got him with a good quarterback and a system that can get him the ball. And if he's with some other good wide receivers, then either he's going to be alone or he's going to take some heat off for them. I mean, you had a guy like Julio Jones on there. I think it'll be an improvement for any team.
Yeah, and then you talk about Seattle, you got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett that are already there. You've got Russell Wilson, who is a top 10 quarterback at, maybe higher than that, but for sure top 10 quarterback. I'm not as big on Russell as some people, but he's probably a top, 5-6 quarterback in the NFL right now. He's 32 years old, Julio Jones is. Atlanta says we need to get a first-round pick back. Supposedly, they have offers, including a future first-round pick. 32 years old. Is Julio Jones worth a first-round pick, in your opinion?
It depends on your team and how much you still have to build in other years. But if you're looking for making an impact next year and you're fairly deep, yes, I think talent-wise, I think he's worth a first. You're not going to have a first-round receiver that's going to be any better than Julio Jones, I don't think, whether it was Jamar Chase or any of those guys. Now, they'll play longer, but I think Julio Jones is worth it. Not every team could afford that. But there are some quarterbacks that, like I said, Russell Wilson, he fit good. Stafford was probably salivating with the idea of throwing to him. I mean, that would be an awfully good fit. He's not Megatron, but boy, he'd be that'd be a really good fit too.
Yeah, he's not far off of Megatron, I don't think. And I still think he's got enough in him. I can't imagine why you wouldn't be willing to give a first-round pick if that's the going price. If you can get him for a second-round pick, by all means. But I don't see why you'd be afraid to give up a first-round pick. I can't think of any team in the NFL, with the exception of maybe Cleveland, just because of the drama that they already have there and Odell Beckham. But I can't imagine any team that wouldn't get better with Julio Jones on their team right now. And if I'm Atlanta, I'm holding out strong saying, no, I'm going to get what I want for this, or we're not going to give him up. Although it seems like a situation where he's going to have to be gone. He doesn't want to be there anymore. But they have said, or I've heard, I forget who it was now, but they said that, this is not a nasty situation, meaning with Atlanta and Julio, it's not to the point right now where it's really ugly, meaning that Atlanta likes Julio, respects Julio, and they're going to trade him to someone decent. They're not going to, trade him to Detroit. They're going to trade him somewhere that he's happy with going, and but they're going to need to get a return for him as well. But June 1st is really that deadline. That's when the cap numbers change, when it doesn't kill Atlanta to trade Julio. So along with that, June 1st might also be the date that we start getting some resolution to the Aaron Rodgers situation. Now, I've been on record, both on this podcast as well as on other shows that I've gone on and talked about Aaron Rodgers. I still think he's coming back to Green Bay. But I can't say that I'm as confident about it today as I was even early last week, just because of some different things. So, Dad, I've not had we've talked once about the Rodgers situation, but as it sits right now, June 1st is this week, so the cap numbers will change. How are you feeling about Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers?
I think there is a good chance he'll be back. Now, again, I think we're going to know real quick this week, because if there is going to be a trade, which they said they're not going to trade him, it'll happen here the 1st of June. And I think it would happen real quick with him, because he would either need to get acclimated to a new team, or they want to get him in. Again, his wide receivers were all supportive of him and didn't come to OTAs. So everybody wants to get that going. From everything you hear, there's a lot of conversation. They're working on a deal. Some of the things I've heard that he has said, I don't think he's closed the door. At least hasn't let people know that from there. So I think there's still a good chance. Now, if he comes back, how quick can he get everybody's trust back? How quick can everything work there? Can he be happy? There's a lot of questions. But again, I don't know if he's going to go anywhere with a better chance to win. I've been impressed that the players at the OTAs, they were all upbeat. They're ready to go. The defense is excited about the new coordinator. Aaron Jones has said all the right things. He's excited to come back. So there's a lot of tools there. And based on his situation and what he has said, I think there's a good chance that he'll be back. again, I think he's leaving a lot of people if he does leave. And, again, unless his demands, he's not given a lot of specific demands. He's talked about the problem being philosophy. And if it's just a matter of people need to respect people more, those fences can be mended. But again, we may all be surprised on Wednesday he may be wearing another uniform. Or on the other hand, he may be signed by Tuesday morning and ready to go. He's got to go one way or the other here pretty quick, I think.
Yeah, and people are like, well, the Packers need to trade Jordan Love. Well, it takes two teams to trade. So even if they wanted to trade Jordan Love, someone else has to want Jordan Love in order for him to trade him. So it's not just as simple as, if they'll trade Jordan Love, then Rodgers will be happy and realize they're committed to him. I don't think that's it. There's really, in my opinion, only two teams that Rodgers can go to, and that's Denver or Vegas. Outside of that, I don't see him trading him to the NFC. Washington could be a team that could get kind of sneaky in there and try to make a move, but I don't see it happening. Vegas makes the most sense in regards to they could send back a quarterback, a second-tier solid starting quarterback in the trade with Derek Carr. And Carr's salary number is not major. It's in the 20 millions, I think. So that's an option. Denver, what are they going to send back to Green Bay outside of draft picks that gets Green Bay excited? Would they send Bradley Chubb? That would excite Green Bay to some degree, but they also have the Smith brothers already in Green Bay as well. But I would take Bradley Chubb. But to me, Vegas makes the most sense because they have a quarterback that can offer. Denver, it makes sense because they're out west. They're in the AFC. They have a team that if you add Aaron Rodgers to, they're going to be really good. But at this point, Green Bay has held strong to the fact that they're not going to trade him. You haven't heard any rumors recently about a Rodgers trade. And as I've said all along, I've been listening to the former players, John Kuhn, James Jones, AJ Hawk, and those guys have all kind of said the same thing. They want him to come back to Green Bay. And John Kuhn said he thinks he will come back to Green Bay. So those are guys that they're not talking directly, asking those questions to Aaron Rodgers, but they do have some insight on what's going on with him. And to me, it makes the most sense that he just stays in Green Bay and ends maybe his career in Green Bay. I think if he comes back, there has to be an extension, doesn't there? I mean, if he's in Green Bay, doesn't it have to be a long-term deal that keeps him there?
Yes, I do. I think, he has always said he wants to stay with one team and retire a Packer. And I would think this would be resolved if he stays here. Again, I think long-term, it would be interesting to see where Jordan Love goes, but I don't think it'll be a situation where, boy, you really have to move Aaron Rodgers, in the next couple of years. He should be fine. Talent-wise, a great year last year. Jordan Love came back looking good, and that's good because, again, Rodgers, sat behind Favre at least 3 years.
3, yeah.
And I think the timing will be good for that. But, again, Aaron Rodgers comes back, they win a Super Bowl, name a road after him, everything's good. So we will see.
Yeah, they're going to work something out with them. It's either, hey, let's just do this year and then we'll move you and work a deal out, or they sign a long-term extension. They're not trading them this year, I don't think. No. I still feel pretty confident. I would say I'm in the 80 percentile of confidence that he returns to Green Bay, whereas 2 weeks ago I was in the 90 percentile. So I've dropped a little bit in my confidence, but nonetheless, I am there at the moment. All right, we're going to talk about some hockey here in just a second. I want to present to you first a new sponsor of the Sports Stove podcast. We are now partnered with Yeti and Yeti Coolers. Yeti Coolers are at home on the dock, at the ranch, in the blind, or on the boat, and the Tundra 65 quart cooler is no exception. It's their most versatile cooler, just as adept at keeping your catches cold in the field as it is to storing the drinks and food for your backyard barbecue. This ice chest is plenty roomy and can hold a limit of redfish or your prized brisket without breaking a sweat. Customize this Tundra 65 Yeti cooler with a collegiate or MLB logo. Those are only available in white, but you can click on the link in the YouTube comments or in the podcast notes to get yourself a new Yeti cooler. If you use the link that we provide for you, we would surely appreciate it, because it's going to let people know that you were listening to the Sports Stove podcast. All right, so at this time, we are going to bring in the one and only Ryan McCarthy from Belly Up Sports Hockey Head Department. We're going to talk some NHL playoffs with Ryan as well. Ryan, thank you so much for being back with us.
Appreciate being back. Thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
I knew I was going to be on Sports Stove today, so I bought myself some Mountain Dew. We're gonna get wild. We're gonna get wild.
Ryan's been busy along with his hockey department that he heads up at Belly Up Sports. He's got his podcast, No Credentials Required, and adding a little bit of fun to your life, Ryan, with some indoor football.
Yep. The National Arena League started last night. The Albany Empire, which is in my neck of the woods in Albany, New York, resumed play. They joined a new league this year, so went to the game last night. I'm a little bit tired, so I decided to do the stream from in my living room. So welcome to my living room, everybody.
Wonderful. All right, let's talk some hockey. Hockey playoffs. Oh, we're almost done with round one. One game left in round one before we get to round two. Let's start with round one. We had a few, well, maybe not upsets is the right way to go, but which team was the most surprising to you in round one of the NHL playoffs?
I'm going to be honest here. The Winnipeg Jets. I predicted the Oilers to win in 6. I did not foresee a sweep by Winnipeg. So that was but they were all very, except for game 1, they're all very close games. They all went to overtime, but Winnipeg wound up getting the goals that they needed at the right time and wound up taking the series in a sweep. So it was just a very surprising turn of events there, I thought.
The other Canadian matchup is what's left, tied 3-3, Toronto and Montreal. They're playing tomorrow night to see who goes into the second round. What do you expect out of that game with Toronto and Montreal?
I'm hoping for an upset. Honestly, I know I have several friends who are Toronto Maple Leafs fans, and I'll drink their tears. But I expect a tight game. It's been tight the last couple of nights. I don't know if you knew this, but I was actually listening to the Montreal game last night from their hub, and they dropped some knowledge at the end. For the first time ever, the team. There's a team that has surrendered 2 multi-goal games in consecutive games in the playoffs, and yet they still won those games in overtime. Huh. And the fact, actually, it's really cool. The fact that Montreal is starting to bring back fans is one reason why I'm hoping for an upset, because I want to see Bell Center rocking, even with 2,500 fans in Bell Center. I want to see that. I want to see that go in the second round.
Yeah, so I watched a lot of hockey last week. I was on vacation and had an opportunity to watch some games.
I am so proud of you.
Well, so I was watching the Predators Hurricane games, and the crowd's just electric. And then I turned on Toronto and Montreal, and I was like, come on, Canada.
Dead. So dead.
But hasn't the fans, I mean, I knew that we missed fans. I didn't realize how badly we missed fans until watching both the Knicks games in the NBA playoffs and the Nashville games in the NHL playoffs. I mean, the fans have been phenomenal, and to see the electricity that's back in the air at sporting events has been really, really good. I know you were big on the Islanders coming into the playoffs. They move out 6 games. They beat Pittsburgh, send Pittsburgh home. They're getting ready to face off. Actually, they already faced off against Boston once. They're down 1-0 in that series. So let's kind of transition to round 2 now. Boston and the Islanders. You got Carolina and Tampa, Colorado and Vegas, and then the winner of Toronto, Montreal versus Winnipeg. Let's start with Boston and the Islanders and your thoughts on that series. Do the Islanders Are they going to come back, or is this Boston's to win?
I think they'll come back. It's only 1-0, so I'm not too worried about it. If you're an Islanders fan, I wouldn't worry too much. They brought some depth in at the deadline to help them out. Travis Zajac had a huge play in game six to save a goal, and he matches up pretty well against any good offensive player that the Bruins will have. The Bruins, I think they realize their windows is closing, especially with three of their core guys, Bergevin, Marchand, Russ, Tuukka Rask, and I can't remember the other guy's name for the life of me for a second, but I think they realize their window is closing a bit, and they're trying to go as far as they can. But this Islanders team's hungry. They got a lot of veterans. I mentioned in FN Sports that Barry Trotz just knows. As you guys know far too well about Barry Trotz and his ability to match up player against player. So if I'm the Islanders, I'm not too worried about it. Just would one at the TD Center, TD Garden, bring it back to the island. It'll have fans there that will just be hungry and starving for another win. Hopefully, maybe it gets a little chippy like the last series. Like the games 3 and 4, so they still a couple games at the TD Garden and win the thing in the win the East in the Isle.
Yeah, and Boston again. I don't follow Boston hockey, but they let Chara go at the beginning of the year, correct?
Yes.
And so
right before, yeah.
So that's kind of the sign of them making that move, that transition now to what's next for them, right?
Yeah, they have a very young defensive group, but they're a solid defensive group. They're very well coached. Charlie McAvoy is one of their as the guy who's basically taking over for Chara in that role of top defenseman and basically the number one defenseman. So the Boston's the same way. They're very well coached. They can score goals in bunches as they did last night, and I expect this to be a very tight series, and they're a good team. They're a good team. Very, very lots of veterans, and that's going to be a tight series.
All right, let's move on to Carolina and Tampa. The game one is Sunday night tonight as we're recording. And Carolina, again, I saw a lot of them, over this last series against Nashville. They got a rookie goalie. They put the puck in the goal a fair amount against Nashville. Tampa, a solid team last year, and again this year. What do we expect out of this series between Carolina and Tampa?
You've got a team that's looking to repeat and prove that last year wasn't. I wouldn't say a fluke, but I would say the same. I guess they're out to prove that they're going to be an elite team for years to come against a team that's up and coming, a very exciting team to watch. Against Nashville, we saw a lot of that. They're going to have the fans on their side. Carolina's going to have the fans on their side, and they finished in first place in the Central for a reason, and they get the home ice advantage. That's going to be huge. If Tampa can steal a win at the RBC, as it was RBC Arena, RBC Center in Raleigh, if they can steal a game, that could swing things towards Tampa Bay's favor. But yeah, as you mentioned, Carolina's got some young goaltenders. I guess a young goaltender and Nedeljkovic, but he's a solid goaltender. But he's got a solid group in front of him. Dougie Hamilton in defense. Sebastian Aho at center. Jacob Slavin, he's a +5 right now. He's leading the team in the +5. He's good. He's a good solid defensive forward. I think it's good. It's going to go. I think it's going to go 7 games. To be honest with you.
Definitely two good teams for sure. Then Colorado and Vegas. At the beginning of the hockey season, I came on your podcast, and Colorado is one of the teams that I mentioned that I was kind of excited to see what they did this year. A pretty young squad, from what I understand. I'm not a Vegas fan. I appreciate the entertainment value that Vegas brings, but as a Nashville fan, I couldn't be a Vegas fan. So I'm rooting for Colorado, but what do we expect out of Vegas and Colorado?
I think it's going to go 7. as in this series too. Two very good teams. Vegas is loaded. Colorado's loaded. It's going to come it's going to come down to which team is going to steal a win away from home. Both these teams had 20 plus wins at home during the year. It's the only division that had 3 teams with 20 plus wins at home. And it's going to come down to whether or not either of those teams can steal a game from at the other's arena and make it a series. I don't think any of those. If it goes up 3-1, I'm not going to be surprised if either team comes back, whether or not it's Vegas or Colorado. This is probably the toughest series to call. I mean, either of them could win it and advance to the semifinal. I just think. It's tough. It's funny because I had Vegas as one of my Cup teams playing for the Stanley Cup in at the beginning of the year. My other was Philly. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed in Philly. But getting back to the topic at hand, I should think Vegas has too many veterans. They've got too much depth at forward scoring. They're loaded with veterans. A lot of these guys are the core group that have been with the organization for all 4 years of existence. I think Vegas will take it in 7. Much to your chagrin.
Yeah. So I feel like Colorado has been underrated as far as from the fan base goes, the outside looking in, so to say. And so I'll give you my surprise. I'm going to go Colorado in 5 over Vegas in this series. So when I'm right, you just remember that. And when I'm wrong, just forget about it.
Hot
Dad,
takes from the sports stove.
Yeah. Dad, do you have any questions for Ryan?
Again, I appreciate you being on and enjoying talking more about hockey. Of course, kept up a lot with the Predator series last week. It'd be really interesting to see. I hadn't seen Carolina a lot. They look very, very good. It will be interesting to see how far they can go. Last time you were on, I picked up that you cover a lot of college hockey, and I'm very the Predators, I'm very encouraged by their young players. They had some guys come up and play real well this year. But there are a couple of college prospects. One, of course, UMass won the Frozen Four, and they had a defenseman, Delgazo. I wonder how good you think he is or what potential he has to be a help in the future. And also the Connecticut goalie, Vomaka. They've got him, signed him. Wonder what you know about those two.
I don't know a whole lot. I did a little research before I came on, and as far as Nashville prospects go, and by all research, I'm in about 5 minutes of it. But I looked at the NHL. NHL.com had a column from back in December and gave the top 5 prospects for Nashville. I didn't see any of those players in that list. Obviously, it'll have to be updated. The 2 players on the list who actually played in Nashville this year, Eli Toivonen, he had 22 points this year with Nashville. Played a big part in their rally back in late March, early April. That kind of spurred them along to the playoff berth. Also, you have David Ferentz, who played. I mentioned him in the last podcast. He played at Boston U. Had 43 points in 34 games in 2020. Was considered a top 10 in the. He's a top 10 in the voting for the Hobie Baker Award, which is basically the Heisman Trophy of college hockey. He played 2 games for the Predators this year, but I think he's probably going to spend a couple of weeks in Chicago just to get his legs under him, and then probably join the team next year. I'm looking at the other prospects here, and the one thing I always noticed that Nashville's good at is developing goaltenders. Thomas Bocoon picked him up in the expansion draft a bunch of years ago. He basically was first in line, and then came Pekka Rinne, who has been with the team for what seems like forever. And now you got UC Saros, who's become a star in the last couple of months. A lot of people picking him up in their fantasy league, but they also got this other goaltending prospect His name is Yaroslav Askarov. He's a Russian goaltender. He's considered the number one prospect overall. He's only 18 years old. He's going to spend a couple more years in Russia. The only name I could think of that I can compare him to is Ilya Sorokin from the New York Islanders, because he was drafted by the Islanders, spent a couple years in Russia, and now he's making his name known in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He's had a couple solid games in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I think it's going to take a while for him to develop. He's only 18 years old. He's probably going to play for the Russian national team during the junior tournament, under 20 tournament, which is a big junior tournament. I hope you'll see him in the Russian uniform. He's considered the number one prospect overall, and he's played some big league hockey up over at the KHL level with St. Petersburg, as we know, as used to be the Russian Red Army team of old back in the Soviet days. But he's considered the number one prospect. Number two is Eli Toivonen. He played in about 40 games this year. Played a couple of games in the playoffs. Then you've got Philip Tomasino, who played with the Canadian junior team this past year in the tournament. He spent his year because they couldn't play juniors in Ottawa or Ontario this year. He played in Chicago this year. Played 40 games played 33 games with them. And then lastly on the list is a forward named Igor Afanasayev, who also played juniors in Canada. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they canceled their season, but he's high on their list too. So he'll probably join the team according to NHL.com. He's not projected to play for another couple seasons either, but he's had some pretty good stats over in the Russian First Division. He'll probably stay there for a couple more years to develop, and then make his way over to stateside of the United States. He's a second round pick in 2019, but he's considered one of their high ups as far as prospects go.
Nashville did a great job with Pekka Rinne at the end of the season. He played the last game of the regular season. At home, the fans were great. The social media was phenomenal, getting out stuff for Pekka Rinne. He's meant a lot to the team. And you're right, Vokun was so popular for so many years. Dad, who was the goalie with Vokun or right before Vokun that played Dunham. Before? Yeah, Dunham. That's Mike right. Dunham. And Predators were always – the goalies were their favorites, it seemed like. But Vokun was a crowd favorite. Pekka Rinne, phenomenal, had some great years. And now Juicy, Jayus Saros is the guy. And you're right, they got a kid coming up in a couple years they drafted that should be phenomenal as well. Last question I got for you, Ryan, is about the Pittsburgh Penguins. They lose 4-2 in the opening round. There's a lot of question marks around that team. What I heard a lot of was they weren't very tough. And I did not watch any Penguins games, but Pat McAfee made it very clear that Sidney Crosby got his butt beat and nobody did anything about it. And so my question, I guess, to you is what does a team like Pittsburgh, you got Washington that got eliminated in the first round also, and they've got some star power. What do these teams with the stars like Sidney Crosby have to do to get back to that top spot in the NHL?
Well, first of all, don't take your hockey advice from an ex-punter. First of all. Secondly, I don't think there needs to be a whole lot of changes with the Penguins. Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, they got their core guys. Goaltending is young, just with DeSmith and Tristan Jarry. It's a young goaltending group. Grittiness, they brought in Jeff Carter from LA at the trade deadline to give him a little bit of grit, a little bit of the timely scoring. But I just think they just ran to a really good, really gritty, tougher Islanders team. And it's funny, I was actually watching the Rod Peterson show last week, and they had a poll question of whether or not to stay the course, add some pieces, or blow it up and restart in Pittsburgh. And majority of the people who voted said They just need to add some pieces. So I think they just need to add some. They probably just need to add some depth scoring for surely. They maybe have some guys over at Wilkes-Barre Scranton in the AHL that can bring along and help add to the depth. That's probably the other problem with this year with a lot of teams was just the AHL had just such a short season, and players didn't get a lot of ice time. You had taxi players coming in and out because of COVID. But getting back to the original point, I just think the Penguins need to add some depth scoring, not so much toughness, but just depth scoring. Maybe add a little bit of grit. We'll see what happens there. I mean, free agency is coming up quick. There's going to be a lot of big names out there that are going to be either restricted or unrestricted free agents. It's going to be a very entertaining offseason in terms of free agency. The draft, not so much, but free agency is definitely want to watch free agency for sure.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll bring Ryan back or in the off season to talk some hockey additions and things looking for those free, because they're right. There's some big names going to be out there this year for sure. Ryan, tell everybody where's the best way so that they can follow you and catch you on your programs.
So my personal Twitter account is @WhoIsRyanMCC. That is my personal Twitter account for all my sports takes and other life takes. No credentials required. It's my locally crafted podcast. I transitioned from covering national sports to local sports. I'll be covering Albany area sports in New York, in the capital region. So you can find the Belly Up. You can find the Twitter channel is @BellyUpNCR. New episodes every Wednesday, and around for the weekend, I'm actually going to be transitioning out of around for the weekend, making that a regular Friday program for no credentials required. But that is @BellyUpAFTW. How about 3 more episodes of that, and then we transition over to no credentials required for Friday night thing. So that's where you can find everything.
All right. Awesome. Ryan, thanks so much for being back on with us, taking a couple minutes here this afternoon to record, and we'll keep up with you. We'll talk to you again here in the future.
All right. Good talking with you, Stover family. Have a great day.
Thanks.
All right, Dad, we're going to wrap up. We're going to talk some quick basketball and a little bit of baseball as well. We got a few minutes left in the program. Let me jump to basketball real quick. But we've got a USA men's 3-on-3 team losing to the Netherlands and therefore will not qualify for the Tokyo Olympics. Dad, did you know that the Olympics were going to have men's 3-on-3 basketball this year?
I did not. I had not heard that before. From there, it's interesting. I mean, it's so popular, and I know the Olympics have tried to get into sports, not just stay with the traditional type stuff, even in the Winter Olympics. So it makes some sense. I didn't know there was anything, upper level 3-on-3 at all, but I definitely didn't know it was going to be in the Olympics. It's hard to believe, though, you'd do anything with a basketball and the USA would get eliminated.
Yeah, Joey King led the way for the USA team. He played at the University of Minnesota. Robbie Hummel from Purdue is on the team. Kareem Maddox played at Princeton, and then a guy named Dominique Jones on the team as well. They did not qualify. They won the 2019 World Cup, but could not qualify for the Tokyo Olympics. One thing that's making it harder to qualify this year, according to the article that I read, is they are leaving some spots open for nations that do not qualify for the 5-on-5 tournament to get a team in there. So that way kind of every nation gets a chance to some degree. Then the NBA playoffs are in full swing as well. Philadelphia up 3-0 on Washington. Atlanta is up 3-1 on the Knicks. Milwaukee swept the Heat. Brooklyn up 2-1. They play tonight on Boston. Boston won Game 3. Utah is up 2-1 on Memphis. The Clippers are up 1-2 on down 2-1. Dallas is up 2-1 on the Clippers. Luka Doncic has been quite entertaining, although he is a little dinged up. They play again tonight. Also, Denver and Portland are tied at 2-2. That's an interesting battle. And then the Lakers and Phoenix. Lakers leading 2-1, although as we record, they are currently playing game number 4 and in L.A. right now. That game is going on as well. Dad, I know you don't watch a lot of NBA, but one thing that you mentioned before was the Luka Doncic and the entertainment value behind Luka. NBA playoffs right now. Well, actually, I want to go to this. We're running out of time, so I want to transition to this quickly. The New York Knicks, they're down 3-1. They're probably going to get eliminated here in the first round. A lot of younger generations don't understand Knicks basketball because they've been kind of bad for a while. So what does it mean for the New York Knicks? What are they to basketball, I guess?
Well, it's interesting. I listen a little bit on the radio to guys in New York, and they're very disappointed, that it's getting to be a close series. Haven't kept up much with Atlanta, but that's been a really good series, and it's wide open.
Yeah, Atlanta's got a phenomenal roster. I mean, not like superstar roster, but as far as talent goes, Atlanta's got a great roster as well. Then high school basketball announced, there was an article out on this as well. They are doing an 8-team, 10-game season league, I guess. Then they'll have a postseason tournament. Oak Hill, Monteverde, IMG Academy, Sunrise Christian Academy, Wasatch Academy, La Lumiere School, and then 2 more teams that have yet to be announced will be a part of this high school league. They're really just creating opportunity for scouts to come in and see the top players in the nation play against each other. So you'll actually get to see them kind of competing against each other and everything there. All right, Dad, you're kind of breaking up a little bit, so let me see if we still got you. What are your thoughts on the high school tournament? Nope, we lost him. We got him a little broken up there. We're going to give him a second to come back and rejoin us here in just a second. This happens occasionally here as well. This high school tournament's interesting because one of the things that you're dealing with in this high school tournament or this high school league, I guess, is in the past you've got these great players and they'll play 1 or 2 games and against the top opponents, but then they'll kind of play easy games, I guess, the rest of the time. So this league is going to provide an opportunity for NBA teams and scouts to see top-level talent playing against each other and only against top-level talent. So it'll be easier, I think, for college coaches to see this is exactly what they are. This is how they look against other opponents that are in the same kind of category as them as well. And so, I think it's going to be a good thing overall, especially for opportunities for these kids to get seen there in front of scouts. All right, so Dad, give me what your thoughts are on the high school basketball league.
Well, I think all the things are changing in amateur sports. I think I don't know if this will totally be good because these are all private schools, and that'll be private schools that are in there. So obviously, you're going to have the top players looking about. I mean, the recruiting thing for these private schools with this kind of exposure is going to be unbelievable. I mean, Oak Hill has always had good people go to them. A lot of these schools, IMG here lately, both football and basketball, they're getting everybody going there. Now, you go to 8 teams and they expand it beyond there. The recruiting thing, I mean, kids are going to want to go there. So maybe, the recruiting won't have to be too hard. But definitely that's going to be the place to go, to be there. And then depending on what the NBA does and when they start taking people in, again, these schools are going to be interesting because they're going to have, more than 5 or 6 good players. I mean, they're going to have, so it depends on the coaching and a lot of things there. How much exposure does everyone get? I think it's going to change high school basketball, at least. You say, well, it's just 8 schools, but I think it'll have a big impact. I know the last few years there's been more high school games. Back in my day, there was Christmas tournaments and teams would cross over states and get exposure that way. They play in those. And then now, the last few years, you've had on TV high school basketball, big names playing each other to get exposure there. Be kind of interested to see who these next two teams are. And again, I think they'll pretty much have to be private schools, but I don't know. I mean, there's some names when I think of high school, DeMatha Catholic and different ones that always have been there. So it'll be interesting to see, and be interesting to see how this changes things.
Well, and you got Sierra Canyon, which has LeBron James's kid on it. You have to think that they're doing their best to get them in this league as well. They've had Dwayne Wade's kid. They've had some of the top. BJ Boston was there. They've got some of the top players there as well. I would assume they're working to get them in, but we will see on that. Doesn't this murky the waters of amateurs getting paid? Because if you have a league with 8 of the top high schools in there, you know it's going to be sponsored. You know the money's going somewhere. You know the shoe companies are just salivating over this as well. And there's already so many issues with amateur players receiving money and just getting it just dangerously close to just inviting these creeps into just causing all kinds of problems when it comes to paying people under the table and stuff like that. So I guess that's my question. Do you think this league is going to open the door to more problems when it comes to paying amateurs to play, especially high school kids?
Oh, I think it will. I don't think there's any doubt about that because, again, there's going to be a lot of recruiting, a lot of wanting to get people there. And you get 8 teams and, they each have at least 10 really good guys. You talk about the shoe companies and that, these are the guys they want. I mean, they're all going to be for them. People don't have to go look around now. I mean, you can be right there at these games and very, very visible. And I think it'll even murky the waters about college. I don't think this will probably be a help to college basketball in the long run.
Yeah. All right, we're going to transition. We're going to get to our last topic today, and that's Major League Baseball. Before we get there, though, we have been partnered with Skullcandy for quite some time now. They've been good to us. Dad, would you mind telling the listeners a little bit about Skullcandy?
Well, I'll tell you what, whether you're looking for true wireless freedom or total musical immersion, now's the time to score a deal on Skullcandy Audio. $20 off on their feature-packed Indie Evo earbuds or $30 off on active noise-canceling Hesh ANC headphones. Again, all you have to do is click the Skullcandy link in the YouTube comments or in the podcast notes to get these great deals that you'll really enjoy.
Thanks, Dad. Yes, click those links, the links that we give you on the YouTube comments and on the podcast notes. When you click that link, they know then that you listen to the Sports Stove podcast. And so it helps us if you'll use those links. We would surely appreciate it. Dad, let's wrap it up talking about some baseball here. I saw an interesting stat today on Twitter from the Cleveland Indians. Well, actually from Bally Sports, which broadcasts the Indians baseball games. They said Josh Naylor, the player for the Indians, became the first Canadian-born player to hit a home run against the Toronto Blue Jays. To me, that was a mind-boggling stat.
Yeah, that is interesting. I spend too much time looking up things like that, but
I don't look it up. It came up for me, but yeah, I mean,
so
I wonder how many Canadians are in Major League Baseball because that seems like that would be such a strange thing to not have happened before. Then I also, before we talk about just teams in general, the Cy Young odds are changing almost on a weekly basis right now. Right now, Jacob deGrom and Garrett Cole are the leading odds getters for the Cy Young Award in the NL and the AL. Also in the National League, you got deGrom, Corbin Burns, Trevor Bauer, Yu Darvish, and Brandon Woodruff. So 2 Brewers in that list. And in the American League, you've got Cole, Shane Bieber, Glasnow in Tampa, Rodon in Chicago, and Lance Lynn. He's a long shot at the moment. Has there been anything so far about the baseball season that's caught you, anything that's caught your eye or anything that's surprised you?
Well, it really has because, we went over all the different divisions at the time, so I looked at it a lot more. And I'm not sure, just 2 months into it, for sure how big of an impact it is. I'm anxious to see what you think. But I noticed there's, 30 teams, so there's 15 that are 500 or better right now, and 15 are under 500 already. I don't know if that's normal or not. And we both said as we looked at it, pretty much it looks like the Yankees and the Dodgers, and we'll see what happens. And today they're both in third place in their division. So surprises, no doubt about that. Now, some have been surprises and faded already there. Again, I've always kind of been a Giants fan, and I'm a little bit surprised, and they've hung in there. I was interested when you start talking about the Cy Young, if the Giant pitcher was going to get any recognition yet. He's had a very good year. And I don't know that they'll hang in there. San Diego looks really, really good as far as trying to catch them is concerned. But otherwise, I think most of the teams that we talked about, doing well are the leaders. A couple probably aren't doing as well as, people had expected.
Yeah, Minnesota has probably been the biggest surprise as far as bad play goes. They're 21-30. It's been really, really ugly for Minnesota. On the other hand, Oakland started off slow, but they've come back around, and they're leading their division right now. The Yankees, 4.5 games back on Tampa, and 3.5 games back on Boston in their division. The Red Sox have been a lot better, I think, than people anticipated there. White Sox leading the Central, Cleveland 3.5 back. Kansas City's finally fading. They were up there for a while, but they're fading back a little bit. Houston's hanging in there right behind Oakland as well in the AL West. National League, that National League East started off really, really bad, and they've only got one team over 500 right now in the East, and that's the New York Mets. The Mets' home record, 15-5 at home, one of the best in the entire Major League Baseball. Atlanta having some issues. Marcell Ozuna gets arrested this week for domestic violence charges, and we'll see kind of what plays out there. His wife has been arrested for domestic abuse before, too, so it's probably not a great household there. So we'll see how that goes down. But Atlanta, with a lot of young talent, they're really struggling this year. Philadelphia also 25-28 at this moment. Not expecting that, or I wasn't expecting that at least. And they have a -23 run differential as well. In the Central, you've got the Cardinals, who I think are the best team in the Central. They lead by a half a game over the Cubs, who've made a huge comeback. Basically, they were way down towards the bottom. They're on a 6-game win streak. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. Milwaukee's trying to hold on. They're 2.5 back. Cincinnati's fading. Pittsburgh is not good. And then, like you said, in the West, San Diego, San Francisco, and the Dodgers are the top three. San Francisco is a surprise. They're at 32-20, 12 games over 500. They have a +63 run differential, but San Diego seems to be the best team right now. The Dodgers, man, they've got the talent. So if they make the playoffs, I'd be scared to death to face them. But they've struggled at different places, really on the road. They're 14-13 on the road. That's where they haven't been able to get it done. So they're going to have to pick up their road. And I believe the schedule allows them to make some ground up, because I believe you play a lot more division games later in the season as well. So they'll have a chance to catch up, but it's been kind of a weird baseball season so far. Fantasy baseball wise, has there been a player on your fantasy baseball team that has helped you, and you're sitting there going, "Wow, I'd like to claim great knowledge, and that's why I picked him up, but he really surprised me"?
Well, my team is doing pretty good, as you know, in this league. Not doing good this week, but otherwise, probably Posey has really surprised me.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of my top, hitters. I don't think there's any doubt, he's surprised some of the other guys that were supposed to be good. I think they're doing real well. Benintendi is doing really well, and he's been a help. And pitching wise, again, Gosman, better than I thought he would have been. And I've been able to pick up the guy from the White Sox. Was it Rodon or Rodon?
Rodon, yeah.
Rodon, and he's having a great year. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, a lot of these players, I think, it's always that way with fantasy. It's a prediction, and you don't know until you get going. But looks like a lot of players doing well.
When we started recording this podcast, I was blowing you out in fantasy baseball this week. As it sits at this very second, we are tied in fantasy baseball. So there's that. But nonetheless, all right, we've taken enough of everybody's time today. Thank you for listening today. Do go and visit those links in the podcast notes or on the YouTube comment section for Skullcandy and Yeti coolers. Yeti is newly partnered with us, so make sure that you go out, take a click on the link, look around a little bit. Even if you don't buy anything, look and see what's available there as well. Then, of course, Belly Up Sports as well. Go to bellyupsports.com. And we're excited. We're excited to pump out some more content. We've got some guests that we're working on getting scheduled and excited about what's ahead with there. If you know Nate Oates, would you give him a shout out and say, hey, go on the Sports Stove, because his gatekeeper is really good at keeping the gate closed. So let's work on getting him on the podcast. We have been denied by the gatekeeper at the University of Alabama, but we're gonna keep plugging away at that one nonetheless. But we've got other great guests that we've got planned coming. So keep an eye out. We're hoping to have another episode out Tuesday night, dropping a Wednesday morning for you as well. But outside of that, Dad, thanks for being back with us. We had Ryan McCarthy on today, too. We want to thank Ryan for taking the time out of his busy schedule to talk a little bit of hockey with us as well. And then lastly, before we sign off, I want to shout out to Shaka Cummings, co-host of the F in Sports podcast. He announced this week that he's going to be stepping away from the podcast as he is getting more degrees, going and getting the master's, and he's already busy teaching and things. And so we love Parker and Shaka and their program. Parker will still be doing the podcast, but just wanted to give a quick shout out to Shaka Cummings, and good luck, Shaka, in all your future endeavors as well. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to the Sports Stove podcast. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.